I think it would be interesting to learn more about how merging vets and players works and what actually makes that work, and then what actually happens after these guys get connected.
Yeah. So the genesis of it really was
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mountain Tough Podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Diefenderfer, and I'm so glad that you're here. I absolutely love seeing you dive into these episodes week after week, and it is our goal every single episode to bring you an inspiring guest that helps you live abundantly, helps you stay dangerous, and really adds some mental toughness skills to that mental fitness toolbox. If you are new to this show, two things. I want to make sure you know that as a listener to this show, you can train on Mountain Tough 6 weeks for free. That's all our physical training programs, daily workouts, guided workouts, mental programs, nutritional programs, spiritual programs, all on the app on your phone. All you need to do to take advantage of that is go to MTNTOUGH.com, click Start Free Trial, and check out with the code MOUNTAINPOD. All caps, all one word. That's going to get you rolling for 6 weeks for free. Secondly, my brotherhood program called The Sword. I want to make sure you know about that if you are looking for a brotherhood of like-minded men. All you need to do to learn more about that is go to thesword.life. Now, shifting over to today's guest, we have a very special episode on the show today. We have Nate Boyer. He was a United States Green Beret. He's an actor. He was a former professional football player. He played one season with the Seahawks. We're going to get into that today. So please stand by for Nate Boyer. With you, I wanted to start with your humanitarian work because I think that's super interesting, especially like with your background, Green Beret, NFL, actor, but now the humanitarian stuff. I think that's really fascinating that that's kind of been the trajectory of your life. And I think that it's also super interesting to what we were talking about before we hit record, that what we've seen a lot in Mountain Tough this year is there is a vibe right now, especially this year, where a lot of men, a lot of listeners, they know they were made for more. They know that they should be doing something that God is calling them to do. And a lot of times that ends up being humanitarian style work. But they do have a hard time taking that step and actually going for it. So I'm curious kind of what led you to what you have done on the humanitarian front, but also kind of what helped you overcome that fear and just go for it.
well, honestly, it kind of started there. For me, I was, graduated high school, grew up in the San Francisco Bay, right? I grew up in a town called El Cerrito City, called El Cerrito, right between Berkeley and Richmond. So, Berkeley generally associated with like hippie culture, yeah, great university there. My mom got her PhD from there. And right down the street was the horse racing track, Golden Gate Fields, that my dad worked at. He was a racehorse veterinarian for years. And my mom was an engineer. So like super high performing parents, that were very motivated. Some of the first to at least get a higher education in their family. Um, and just worked really, really hard. So I was around that culture, but I also, maybe it sometimes felt a bit not connected to that because they just worked a lot. But they were always there for us. I don't want to ever,
Yeah.
like I didn't have that, but I guess I just didn't recognize it. I didn't recognize, what that took. So there you got Berkeley, and then you got on the other side, you got Richmond, which is a pretty rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um, so growing up there, football was my favorite sport. 49ers were really good when I was a kid. They won a bunch of Super Bowls. So, I wanted to be a pro athlete from a very young age. That was all I wanted to be. as I got into the high school years, realizing I'm really not that athletic compared to some of these people. You know what I mean? Like I'm a hard worker and I hustle. I'm always like the hustle player on the team, but not necessarily not necessarily gifted in those ways. But also I don't think I really committed to a certain type of work ethic that it takes to be great at anything.
Hmm.
So I graduated high school, a lot of dreams and passion and goals and but not really any direction or specific plan of attack, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do besides sports. So I moved down to San Diego. I worked on a fishing boat for a little while. I took some firefighting classes, just trying to figure it out, trying to find that place. And I remember feeling like, okay, this feels like the right path because the adventure aspect, going off on that fishing boat was pretty cool. The firefighting thing, obviously a very honorable job. But I also had doubts as to whether I was the type of person who should have someone's life in my hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worried and had that insecurity that like, well, I'm not smart enough. I'm not like I'm just not good enough for that. Like I'll mess it up, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be responsible for something bad happening to somebody else. So I kind of bailed on that, I sort of quit on it. And I think that really affected me going into my 20s as like now you're a person that's kind of quit something, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I hadn't really been that person before. And so I ended up interested in filmmaking, which I circled back to much later. Moved up to Los Angeles, started taking some classes, um, and then 9/11 happened, and didn't join the military right away, but it certainly got me thinking. Like, all right, I need to. Something's not working for me right now. Like, there's the world's an interesting place. There's obviously a lot of turmoil, and things like this. Like, it's hard to imagine something like that would happen here, at least for me at that age.
Yeah.
I was just like, I can't. I think I would be a lot less shocked today, sadly. But in 2001, it was just like it felt so out of the blue. I was pretty out of touch with what was going on in the world and all that. And so I started searching for that, like searching, I guess, not the meaning to life, but my meaning. And that brought me to, I backpacked through Central America and Europe. Um, but eventually it brought me to the Darfur, a region in Sudan, in Africa that um, was in the midst of a genocide and refugee camps, you know, flooding with people,
Hmm.
and not being able to keep up with that. And I volunteered there for 60 days. I had a 60-day visa that I was able to acquire.
This
Flew
was
myself
before the
over there.
military?
This is before the military.
Got it.
Yeah. This is in 2004. Um, I got over there. I was 23 years old, didn't have a degree, didn't have any special skills, nothing like that, but I just wanted to help. I wanted to be look, I'd done some construction at that point in my life. I'd done some other, kind of handy type jobs. I figured they could put me to work somewhere, if whether I was digging ditches or whatever, like,
Yeah.
to sort of lay the groundwork for some of these refugee camps they were just behind on setting up. Um, and that's really what I ended up doing. I mean, I was assisting in the medical centers. I was helping, get food rations out to different areas. We were also helping with the regions that weren't, full of refugees, but like the neighborhoods, the villages that were affected by the refugees coming in, like the locals. So helping them as well, playing soccer with the kids every day, like just things like that, but
Yeah.
feeling purposeful, feeling useful, and feeling like me being there, even though I wasn't doing anything that anybody else couldn't do. Like these were all basic things. Feeling needed, feeling like, this was kind of finding my place, and belonging in a place that um, seemed so foreign. It was so foreign, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it was just like that's where things really started to kind of click for me. And so my last week there in country, unfortunately got malaria, and this local family put me up, nursed me back to health, and put a little radio next to my caught while I was trying to recover. And I was listening to the Second Battle of Fallujah. And so through listening to that and these young men and women that were over there, fighting for those who can't fight for themselves, it all kind of clicked like this is the next step for me, like the military. And so
Mm,
that honestly, that humanitarian piece, that um just that opportunity to serve led me to enlisting in the military because I wanted to keep serving and I wanted to also um fight for something.
for sure. And you've talked about this before, but you kind of, through that experience, it sounds like this might be the cornerstone of where that philosophy was being built. But you kind of started to identify that, like, service is a way for a man to restore his heart, or, service is a way for us to fight back anxiety, depression, loss of purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that that's where that stuff creeps in, when you have those open spaces that aren't filled with something meaningful, or something that you're excited about, even if it's mundane stuff, it doesn't have to all be, to me, it doesn't have to all be life changing and full of purpose, but it's got to be something that you're interested in and passionate about, like you said earlier, before we came on air too, about, we were talking offline about people being stuck in a job that they just have no interest in, they just don't. That's hard. I mean, like, look, life during in life, we have to do things we don't want to do sometimes.
Yeah,
It's like
for sure.
it's not a world, it's not a reality where 100% of what you're doing is like feeding your creative passion or whatever that is. However, if it's not fueling that and leading to that, or that isn't at least a part of your life, and even better if you can find a way to connect what you're doing to make a living to that thing somehow, even if it's not exactly what you think you want to be doing. um it can get tough quick, and you can find yourself spiraling and following these paths of something you actually have no interest in because you think you need to do that in
Mm.
order to um, take the next step forward in life and sort of build something. But if it's like, you'll look back later, I think, because I've started down those paths and then had to like back out of them. It's like, this is not what I want to be doing. Why am I even spending my time on this? Like, I can find another way to put food on the table. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? I can
yeah.
find,
I know one of my mentors defines it as a success map where you might be doing something you don't like right now, and that's okay as long as it's getting you to where you want to be on your success map. And so he
mm,
breaks it down into like 3-year windows is what we work off of. So if this isn't leading me to my finish line in 3 years, whether that's what fills my passion bucket or what I want to do to take care of my family, if I'm not hitting those benchmarks, then it shouldn't be something I'm doing if I hate it. There's plenty of other things I could be doing that I don't like that could be leading me to the finish line on that success map. But figuring that out and adapting and pivoting quickly enough is hard for a lot of guys.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's easy to get, look, money is, it is an evil thing in a lot of ways, but it is also a necessity. So it's like it's a tough one. Like the way the world works, you need it, you need it to take care of your family. You need it to take care of yourself. It is part of the deal, but it's easy to get addicted to that. I
Mm-hmm.
get addicted. I find myself getting stuck too, like hyper saving, and like just being so worried that like some catastrophe will happen and I won't be able to take care of it, or whether that's for my family at large or just for myself, whatever that is, that I'll just like I get in this obsessive mode sometimes, and then
Yeah.
I have sometimes I need somebody else in my life to break me out of it and be like, bro, it's fine. Like, don't worry about it. You can pay for parking today. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, we didn't find a spot. It's all right. Let's just and I'm like, yeah, but it's such a waste. because I know how things can add up too. And I think I've been around enough people in my life, a lot of that in the military, who were terrible with money. And are
Yeah,
always like, and I'm just like watching them, unravel here. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's because those little things turn into big things, you know what I mean? And whatever. But
for
there's a
sure.
balance. There's just a balance like there is to everything. And I gotta do a better job, just like everybody does in some ways of like locating that and yeah, not getting obsessed with certain things and um not letting it sort of control you because it's a dangerous thing. It's a scary thing.
It's a
Um
trap. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
For more than a century, America's sportsmen and women have led the way in paying for the restoration of wildlife, conserving habitat, and investing in the future of our natural world. This is a legacy built not on what we take ourselves, but on what we give back. That's the nature of conservation, paying it forward for the next generation. This is the reason Mountain Tough is a proud partner of Wild Sheep Foundation, an organization committed to keeping and putting wild sheep on the mountain. If you're not already a member, learn more today at wildsheepfoundation.org. So when you got back from Darfur and you joined and enlisted, and then you went into Army and then found your way into the Green Beret program, that time of your life, were you feeling like you were in the right lane? Were you in the right spot? Were you feeling like you kind of started scratching that service and passion itch?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I yeah, I remember feeling because it was definitely outside of my comfort zone, not just the military, but um the special forces, the training. It's very difficult. It's long. It is a commitment. Um and at some level you gotta let people you gotta follow orders, which I wasn't always great at. People kind of telling you what to do sometimes, and you just gotta take it and do it. Even if you think your way is the better way. That's a great lesson for life too, because you're gonna have people that try and yeah, or not try, but um, that are willing to coach you and teach you in certain things, and you may not always agree with their methods, but you just got to try their way because
Yeah.
sometimes you'll get something out of it anyway. But anyway, I struggled with that initially because it was like, well, why? I mean, why do I need to show my work on this math problem, for example? Like I already got the answer and I figured it out my way. Why do I
Yeah.
need to do it your way? But there is value in other people's way too, and you may find an even more efficient way of solving that problem by meshing, your way with their way. Anyhow, that was like a struggle for me. That was tough though, just because I hadn't had to do that really before. I mean, I guess at some level, parents discipline you, educators maybe growing up, coaches, but not to that level.
Mm,
It was
yeah.
just a shock.
Of
And
authority.
yeah, the authority. Yeah, 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 exactly. And I'm a very rebellious person. That's just who I am in my nature. Um, and so that was challenging, but definitely a lot to be taken from that. And a lot of lessons and sometimes how not to lead
Mm,
um, as well. So, but yeah, that was those 2 years of the special forces training they were very fun though too, because when you go through challenging things together, hard stuff as a group, um, it's not always fun when you're in the middle of it, but you get through it, and you go get cleaned up and you didn't quit, and you moved on to the next phase. Like such a great feeling to do that as a team.
mm-hmm.
I had done and I still continue to do today so many things alone. Um, and it's just not as rewarding as when you finish them with a group of people, finish them with a team, and maybe somebody helped you get through something and you help somebody else get through another thing, and it's kind of cool that there's a chance you might not have been able, neither of you would have been able to complete that thing solo, but you
Mm-hmm.
both finished it together. So,
Oh,
you
it's
know,
it's massive, man. Especially right now. we were talking about it a little bit as we started, but it's all over right now, the loneliness epidemic in men. But then there's also an extreme loneliness epidemic in teenagers also currently. And it's funny because we are trying to solve it, even myself personally, with a couple things I'm working on and with what Mount Tough does. We are all trying to create these brotherhoods, these camaraderie events or catalysts, but we're still doing a lot of them digitally, even like what we're doing today.
Right.
And
Right.
these things are helpful, but in so many ways, social media made everything worse. And you can listen to thousands of podcasts now also, but there's nothing like having like a few group of men that you're pushing hard with and doing something really hard with and struggling together. Like that just can never be replaced digitally. And I think it's a huge part of what our soul is craving. And it's such an attractive part of special operations because you guys are able to get that there. And the struggle is so difficult that it breeds that camaraderie at that extreme level. And I think that's what a lot of us are missing, and it's hard to, even if you want to get that going in your community, in your town, in your city, it's difficult to do. A lot of men are finding it through working out or jujitsu, but even then, it's not the same as like, hey, for full time, we are trying to achieve this goal together as a group, and we're only going to do it if we take care of our brother on our right and our brother on our left. That's hard to replicate anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure we'll get into it later, but the whole, um, I guess, uh, the base for what our organization MVP is all about is, it stands for merging vets and players and bringing together veterans and athletes. And so much of it is that key component is the team,
Mm,
the locker room, the camaraderie, doing something as a group, having a mission and a like a very challenging goal ahead of you, to win that championship or to stabilize this region or whatever you're doing in the military, and having to uh, I shouldn't say having, getting the opportunity to work together as a team and sort of have different ideas and different skill sets mesh together, in a high stakes environment. Of course, war and playing sports are very different, but
mm-hmm.
look, there's 100,000 people watching, in a stadium watching a game because in our society, those things do matter. People
Yeah,
wrap around that stuff. So it's like, um, anyway, you get it. That I think that's such a unique thing, and it is hard to replicate. And both those careers typically end. You're pretty young. Typically you're not even halfway through life, and you've beyond peaked, and you'll sort of tend to think that you'll never feel that again. They talk about the glory days,
yeah.
all the, like the glory days are over, and it's like that's kind of a scary thing. Just like, man, I got 50 years left if I'm healthy, and it's my glory day, it's over.
It's
Like, what do I
crazy.
do for 50 years? Like, that
Yeah,
doesn't sound like, it's a daunting thing. It's not true. Like, there's other ways to find that. Um, it's just those jobs with the uniform and the identity and the way that people do kind of look up to vets and athletes for the most part. Um, yeah, it's a common, um, you talked about traps earlier. It's a common trap to fall into, to sort of, once you're done with that phase of life, to kind of, uh, uh, and not associate with those groups anymore because you feel like, well, I'm not good enough anymore. I'm not part, I don't have what it takes to be a part of that anymore. And
mm-hmm.
they don't want to listen to some old guy that used some old has been, you know what I mean? Like, I feel a little disconnected now from not only the world, but from the world that I was a part of. Um, And yeah, like I think that's a key thing though today is like, finding different ways to replicate that feeling, and not just replicate it in a inauthentic way, to replicate it doing something meaningful, doing something, whether it's building a business or um, a service project or whatever that is. Like there's plenty of opportunities out there. There's plenty of problems that still need solving, and it doesn't all have to be, when you're at your youthful and physical peak necessarily.
Yeah. Let's go right into that. I think it would be interesting to learn more about how merging vets and players works and what actually makes that work, and then what actually happens after these guys get connected.
Yeah. So the genesis of it really was pretty personal. I was in the army from essentially from 2005 full active duty through 2010, and then and so that was my full-time job. Just be a Green Beret. That's what you do. And then in 2011, I transitioned into the Texas National Guard, and I went to college. Um, Growing up, like as I said earlier, football was my favorite sport. Um, but I never played it. And it was a regret of mine not doing that, and not, you know, just because it was, I don't know, it didn't work out when I was quite young. Um, just the youth leagues weren't as popular where I grew up
Mm.
as they are in certain places. Eventually I found myself in Texas, very different football, and
Yeah,
everything.
it's everywhere.
But in the Bay Area, not so much. Like I feel like from my memory, it was like basketball and baseball were almost more popular. Um, Not far from us was a high school called De La Salle, which was like a 12-year streak of undefeated seasons and like a very iconic program. But that felt kind of distant from where I was. And and then, by the time I was in junior high, I could have played. And I think I was just afraid of like, well, I'm clinging on to this starting spot in baseball and on basketball because I'm not a superstar. If I put any time and energy into football, maybe I'll lose that spot or I'll get cut. And
Mm. Yeah.
and so it just like, kind of paralyzed me a little bit from doing what I wanted to do. And also, I was just young. And so I go through high school, never played, and just it's this lingering regret that now 10 years later, it's still like bothering me that I never did this thing. So I I ended up yeah, going to the University of Texas, got into the school, um, and went to football tryouts and just was, I prepared for it. It wasn't just a wing it thing. Now, after the time in the military, I knew how to work. I knew how to like prepare and sacrifice. So I spent that year, my last year in, still doing my job. I was finishing up a deployment in Iraq, went to Israel later that year, still was plenty busy in training and all that. But I was also focusing on preparing for an opportunity to play football, trying to
How
learn how to backpedal and all that stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
but how old were you when you tried out at the University of Texas?
It was right after my 29th birthday, like the day after, I think.
Dang,
So
that's wild.
yeah, I was like, you know what? If I don't go now, I think that 30 year old number scared me, and I
Yeah,
was like, thinking once I turn 30,
it's not going to
you know,
happen.
I'm gonna be too old. I can't go to college at 30. I graduated at 33, but whatever. What I mean? But at least I started at 29. Um, and so yeah, it just was like kind of a now or never moment. And I definitely wanted to do it. I felt ready to go to school too. I hadn't felt ready to go to college really before that. Now I was like, okay, I'm finally ready. I'm kind of a late bloomer. In a lot of ways, I've always been a little bit of a late bloomer. Part of that is hesitation, but a lot of it too is like, just making sure that I'm actually all in on this because I don't like quitting stuff.
Yeah.
I think after experiencing that at 18 or 19, whatever it was, when I dropped out of those firefighting classes, it's not a good feeling of just like, I shouldn't even have started if I wasn't ready, and it
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have
Yeah.
wasted time or whatever. Like that's not. that's not who I want to be anyway. So, yeah, so this was just, I was finally like, I'm ready. I'm not going to quit once I do this thing. I'm prepared and preparing myself for this opportunity. So yeah, went to tryouts, was tryouts really were more about just like, look, we're looking for walk-ons who are going to be practice dummies, basically. You're going to be on the scout team. Like the odds of you actually playing on Saturday are not high, but we need those people. We need those bodies. And the fact that I had this military background and I was in really good condition. I had great endurance. I could just keep going all day long, even though I wasn't the biggest or fastest speed wise. That was appealing to the coaches, and also like, hey, we can have this guy in our locker room that he's probably a decent leader, and it'd be good for us, and so it just made sense, and I went through the trial process, and I kicked butt on it, man, just going a million miles an hour, giving them zero reasons to cut me.
Yeah.
Anytime we were out supposed to jog, just run as hard as I could. Um, anyway,
were you the oldest to ever try out?
maybe at Texas. I've heard stories of guys playing in college that are maybe not at as big of a school as Texas, but so some smaller schools like Division 3 or whatever that were, in the, like, I want to say there was a kicker who was like 50 something or something like that.
Wow.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're a good kicker, if you got a leg, like,
Yeah.
why not? I wish I could kick.
That is awesome.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. But anyway, yeah. So I did that, and then got to play at Texas. And while I was going to school, I was still in the guards. While I was deploying in the summer times and going to Afghanistan, and then coming back and going to training camp and playing football that season. My sophomore year, I earned the starting long snapping job. So I was starting on the team and playing meaningful snaps, and then taking my finals early in the spring and going back to Afghanistan again. And just this back and forth tempo, always trading in a helmet, a football helmet for a military helmet, and
Dang.
pads, shoulder pads for body armor, like going back. At that time in my life, I loved it because I just wanted to keep working. I wanted to keep doing things. I wanted to keep challenging myself. I wanted to keep playing, but I also wanted to keep serving. And then ended up moving back to California to prepare for this opportunity, hopefully, of getting a shot in the NFL. And I got out of the guard, transitioned out of the National Guard in I want to say March of 2015, and then in May of 2015 was the draft, and I was offered by the St. Louis Rams and the Seattle Seahawks to sign as a undrafted free agent, and did that, and played played in one game with the Seahawks in 2015. Just a really cool opportunity, and then 3 days later I got cut, and all of a sudden it kind of hit me. All right, well, I don't have the camouflage anymore. Now I don't have a jersey.
Man.
I don't really have a team or a locker room or something like that sense of purpose, that mission anymore. Like, what do I do? And I'd met Jay Glazer, who owned a gym out in LA and helped train me and get me that opportunity. And I was telling him maybe I'll go back in the military, and he's like, nah. I was 34, still pretty young, and felt kind of at a relative peak in my conditioning and stuff, and he just said, now let's figure out a way to help vets like you, there's and athletes like you, people like you that are stuck in that, feeling like they'll never be great again place.
Yeah, that transition.
Exactly, in that transition. So that's why we started MVP. Jay also works. He's an analyst on Fox NFL Sunday, and also in the MMA world. He was at the time it was Bellator. He, the broadcasters for that. He just knows so many athletes and fighters and coaches and has seen them struggle with that transition, and he knew how much veterans had struggled with that as well. And he thought, um, or we really thought together, like, let's find a way to bring these groups together. Because I've been in both locker rooms, and I could attest that there is a lot of similarities. And again, the battlefield and the ball field, completely different places, but take that out of it, all the other stuff is pretty close. There's a lot
Man.
of, yeah, it's a lot of parallels.
Hey guys, I did want to interrupt for a quick minute right here and let you know about some supplements I've been taking. I did shy away from supplements for a long time. I was always cautious about what they were made out of, where they were from, and who the team was behind the brands. But over the last couple of years, I've got to meet the team at Mountain Ops from top to bottom, and they are an amazing group of humans. I've got to know the CEO, Trevor Farnes, really well, and he is a mission-focused individual that cares about humans living a better quality of life so that they can have that abundant life. So over the last couple of years, he has helped me add some things that have changed the game for me. One of those things that I've added is creatine from Mountain Ops. It helps me maintain some muscle mass, but also it's a big, big player in cognitive function, one of the most researched supplements out there. Also, I've added reds, greens, and protein, all from Mountain Ops. What I found as a busy professional, always on the run, I do eat a whole foods diet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but on the go, it's hard to get enough vegetables, fruits, and protein. So I've added that from Mountain Ops, and it has significantly changed the game. I can feel it in my performance. I haven't got sick for a long, long time, and I can certainly feel it in my mental clarity as well. The last thing I've added is the Mountain Tough Hydrate product for the backcountry, for hunting season. When I'm in the hills, I do run short on those electrolytes. We even have a Mountain Tough flavor, the Mountain Tough Lemon Lime Hydrate, and that is a game changer for hydration in the backcountry. So I keep it really simple. That is all I've added to my protocol, and it has certainly helped me, and I certainly believe in the team and the culture behind Mountain Ops. They have started an initiative that's been around for a while called Conquer Hunger. Conquer Hunger is giving meals to hungry kids that aren't getting enough food, and they've given out over 6 million meals plus to kids through their Conquer Hunger initiative. So every order that happens at Mountain Ops, a percentage of that order goes to Conquer Hunger. So certainly an incredible company, an incredible culture. As a listener to the show, you do get an exclusive offer to Mountain Ops, so make sure you check that out. The offer is incredible as a first-time purchase at mountainops.com. So build your order if it's your first time. They are offering you a 20% exclusive discount. All you need to do is enter the promo code Mountain Tough, all one word, all caps, for 20% off your first order at mountainops.com. That's a crazy story. I mean, if you think about 300 million Americans, how many of them had the chance to go the Green Beret route, the college football route, and then a glimpse of the NFL route? I mean, you've had a super unique path for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely a unique path. And crazier to me that all those things started so late.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I think it would have made more sense in my head maybe if like I joined the military at 18 and then went to college at maybe 23 and had that shot in the NFL at 27 or 28. But the fact that it was like I was 23 when I even first thought about joining the military, when I took that trip to Darfur, and
Yeah.
29 when I went to college, and 34 when I was with the Seahawks, just like always the old man. Which I think is good though. I mean, looking back too, because I was also, for other people to hear that, I think is important, because like, now then after that, I'm like, not only with MVP, but I'm I want to make movies. I want to get into the storytelling space, and something that I had an interest in at 19 but didn't really pursue. And so I'm 35, and starting down that path, doing an internship um, to finish my master's degree, and doing it at a production company, and making coffee and picking up lunch, and
Yeah.
doing those things. It's like starting over in the mailroom kind of thing, and it's free, you know. But I think that's just it's a good lesson for myself, but for others as well, that like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter that you didn't. If you're passionate about that thing or interested in that thing, you can start today or tomorrow.
It's
You
never too late.
It's never too late. You don't need to. Dude, there's people that do this all the time. It's a very simple one, but people that don't pick up a golf club till they're in their 80s because they want to learn how to play golf. And they end up playing golf, until the days that they pass, and they love it. It's like, I know it's just golf, it's simpler, but you can identify and find people that have done extraordinary things.
Mm.
That's very challenging for people of any age that have done it much later in life, and they used all the lessons they learned earlier. Maybe they're all failures, I don't know, but they leveraged that into um, you know figuring out this new thing, this new skill, or whatever, or chasing this new passion down later on. And like at the end of the day, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to do is be, I mean, the scariest thing would be if I knew when it was coming. I know I'm in my last days, and all I can think about is the fact that I didn't live to the fullest, and I didn't try to do that thing I always wanted to do. I didn't chase that dream even for a minute. Like
It,
that'd be a tough one to to close my eyes to. I don't want to do that.
it's massive. I think that's really inspiring for people to hear because certainly there are a tremendous amount of young adults who know they need to do something different and feel like maybe they miss their chance to go into the military. We see that one a lot,
Right.
especially for like young, ambitious, hard charging dudes that feel like they always should have given special operations a chance, but they feel like they're they missed it and they're a little bit too old. But we see that all the time with guys that are 21, 22, 23, 24, and they feel like they missed it and they missed their shot, and now they're not going to go back and try that shot. So I think for people to hear that and for people to know that is massive, because you are right. The famous hospice study is cited a lot, where there is a guy that interviews 2,000 people on their deathbed. Most of them had less than 2 weeks to live. And the number one regret of everyone that he talked to on their deathbed is that they choose to live a life that others wanted them to live, not the life that they wanted to live. And early on, when I started the Mountain Tough podcast, very like first or second episode, this guy had been given a definition of hell that really stood out to me. But he said, one way to think about hell is not what's portrayed in the movies or not what's portrayed with Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that. But he said what you could envision is you are laying in your deathbed and the version of you walks into the room of what you could have been and the things that you could have done. And so you're on your deathbed, a guy that looks just like you walks in, but he has done all the things that you wish that you would have done. And you can see that energy and that joy and that excitement in that individual because he took those risks and went after what his heart was really telling him to do. And you get to catch a glimpse of that guy, and then you pass away. And I was like, oh, dude. It's like, that is powerful. But we have to fight it 24/7, because I'm sure you experienced it. I bet you experienced it all throughout your journey, probably especially like when you went to Darfur at a young age. Many times on these moments in our life, like our friends will tell us we're crazy, our family will tell us we're crazy, society will tell us we're crazy, but we got to just push through all that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, that is a powerful image you just described. Like it almost it sounds like a version of yourself, being that Grim Reaper.
Mm,
Uh, that is a sort of a positive reflection of that, but the effect that it would have on seeing that,
brutal.
um, yeah, it's brutal, so brutal. But yeah, I mean, yeah, no, that's just definitely sticking with me. Like, that's intense, um, but yeah, I like it's just such a common thing, man. It's just such a I got people, a lot of vets that I have connected with over the years and talked to, and some of them I've never even met. It's just through, they reached out through social or something, and they're like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "That you just do it. I don't know. There's no like, you just go uh to the place, or you go meet the
You
person.
should, yeah.
You write that letter and try to have set that meeting, and even if it's 5 minutes of that person's time, if you're trying to learn something, or when you want to work for something for someone or whatever, pick their brain. um I don't like it's scary. That is also scary, you know what I mean, but the alternative to me is scarier. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's just yeah. And there's a lot of things in life, there's a lot of decisions you have to make that are, they should be permanent decisions. When if you want to start a family, for example, that's not something that's one of the few things that, if you make that call, you make that decision, like that's a commitment for life.
Yeah.
It should be. It's written that way for a reason, and people talk about it in those ways for a reason when you do your vows and all that stuff. So it's not meant to be something that you just try.
Mm.
But so many other things in life, um, you have that luxury, and if you're not taking advantage of that, um, you're crazy. That's the crazy person. The friends telling you you're crazy or this is whatever. The crazy person is the one that doesn't go after what their heart is telling them
Yeah.
their whole life, because they're afraid of what everybody else is going to think, or they're afraid of failure, which kind of ties into what everybody else thinks. Usually, our fear of failure is because we don't want to look stupid to other people.
Mm.
We're worried about what the reaction is going to be, and like that person that's like, "I told you so. I told you don't try that because you're just going to get your heart broken. You're just going to get rejected." And it's like,
Life's
okay,
short.
I guess you're right. I shouldn't have tried it, and I'll never try something again, and it's just like those are the people that will never try anything. Those are the people who are going to be visited by that ghost of yourself, and it's going to haunt them. Like, you don't want to be that. Who
No.
cares? Who
Yeah.
cares what they think? Who cares? You're going to get cut at some point. It happened to me multiple times in my life. The most visible one was with the Seahawks, but like I've had so many other times in life I just didn't make it, didn't make the cut. But I'm glad I tried, and then
Mm.
maybe I tried again in another way, in another opportunity. So,
I love
and
that.
yeah, we get to, I you know I have to wrestle with that too. I think everybody does, but just too much of listening to everybody else's opinion and advice on, not really advice, but really opinion on what they think you should do with your life, and what they think is worth the risk. And yeah, it's just, you got to find those. We all have those other ones in our life, and if you don't, you got to find them. Those people in our life that are always going to be like, "Dude, go for it,"
Yeah.
encouraging you in that way. Like, who cares? So what if you don't? So what if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
You know,
You have to have
go
those
make
corner
that
men.
movie. It might bomb. You might make a bad movie, but at least you don't be afraid to make it, ever do it. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy, you know.
We got to have those people, those corner men that are encouraging and supporting us like that is huge.
Mhm.
So, how did you just quickly, like, what is the structure of MVP, and how does it work for people that try to plug into that program?
Yeah. So, you know, really, we've got chapters all over the country. And what we do at our chapters on a weekly or monthly basis, depending on that place and how it's sort of set up. We meet up in the gym. We've got local gyms we work with. A lot of them are veteran owned or athlete owned. Typically they're private gyms. Um, and some of them have an MMA element, some of them don't. Like Randy Couture, great example. He's one of our board members. Randy, for people that don't know, was in the Army for about, I think, 5 or 6 years. He was a high school wrestler, didn't have any college scholarships, joined the Army, stationed in Germany. This is, not during a time of war. Um, but was over there and got back into wrestling and ended up like beating the German national champ, and then got a scholarship offer to Oklahoma State. He went to college at like 25, and wrestled, and then became a 6-time heavyweight champion of the world in the UFC. Just a legend,
So
absolute legend.
awesome.
But Randy, he has a gym in Las Vegas called Extreme Couture, which is his up his brand. And so at that gym, we do some training on the mat. We do, some grappling and some MMA mixed with cross training. And look, it's something that anybody can do because we have veterans and athletes that come through our doors who, you know, as soon as they got done serving or playing, the last thing they wanted to do was train,
Yeah.
so they let themselves go a bit. And we don't want to, we don't want to discourage those people. You can get back to where you were and even better, and we're going to do that as a team. So we'll all, we'll all meet there. We train for 30, 45 minutes, nothing crazy, but just enough to get a good sweat going, challenge each other a little bit, kind of tear down the facade and the front that we may have coming into a place where, with other people with an expectation of maybe being a bit vulnerable. It's a good icebreaker, honestly, to like train to work out together. And then we huddle up afterwards, and it's an open forum, peer-to-peer coaching. um it's all races, genders, sports, branches of the military, ideologies. Like, we don't give a damn, we don't care, we just are there for one another, and with no judgment. We do try to steer the conversations away from what you wouldn't want to talk about at the Thanksgiving dinner table, maybe not so much religion and politics, but if it's, especially from a faith standpoint, if it directly relates to your story, then sure, we're not going to judge you for that either. We're not going to like just, throw that out.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just like, hey, this is a place to tell your story and talk through what's going on in your life. Maybe something you're dealing with that happened 10 minutes ago or 10 years ago that you've never talked about in a group with people that get you because they've been through something similar. You know what I mean? They've also been through that crucible. They've also been cut or had to retire because of an injury,
That's
um,
awesome.
or just weren't at that optimal place anymore. You know what I mean? Of competition. And it's like, but they know what it takes to get there. And so it's just, I think often in life we feel like people don't understand us. We might be a bit disconnected, and there's nobody that I can talk to anymore because I'm not in that locker room. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So we're rebuilding that locker room. That's what MVP really does.
Dude, that is awesome. And people can plug into those at different clubs throughout the country.
Yeah, so right now, we've got chapters in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Seattle, Dallas, Phoenix, and we're starting up in Jacksonville, Austin, hopefully New Orleans soon. We just had a great call with the Saints. We often work with sports teams in these areas. We've done activations in Nashville and Denver, and we're just DC is one of our new chapters. So we're always looking to grow. So that's another great thing to throw out there to people that are listening. If you're from those communities, or even if you're not a former athlete or a veteran, if you've got those people in your world, that you want to help, like, there's
Yeah.
an opportunity to help us with the groundwork there, finding that gym. And usually we like to be able to fundraise locally too, so we can bring somebody on staff, a veteran or an athlete, to kind of run that chapter and do the outreach and make sure that everything's set up. But we also, that's the other big one, we also have a virtual option. And so just like we're doing today, I've never met you in person, and we're having a pretty cool conversation right here. You know what
Virtually.
I mean?
Yeah.
And so we have a virtual option every Tuesday. through Zoom, and we'll have, you know, 20, 30, sometimes more people that'll join from all over the country. And we do a little workout virtually. And then we huddle up on here, and it's just the same kind of situation, I mean, I prefer the in-person as much as possible. I just
Yeah,
love that personal connection. But if you don't have that option, we're not in your city yet. Like there is a way to connect through here. So
that is awesome, especially from the perspective of we've seen it a lot where like firefighters love the ability to chat with another firefighter, cops love to chat with other cops, military guys love to chat with other military guys, players with players, because it is massive when you can sit down and talk to someone who you just know right away has gone through a similar story as yours, and
yeah,
they know about the late nights, the shift work, the schedules, the training, the trauma, before you even open up to them that they've lived that same story in a different way. And so the way you guys are making that a connection is huge, because that's really what people need, is to get some of these feelings out on the table with people that they trust, but also with people that they know have walked a similar walk. So I'm sure it's just life-changing after guys get in there. Mountain Tough is the fitness app trusted by the dedicated. Mountain Tough ethos is backed by, we've always wanted to be the best in the world at helping our customers become more mentally tough. So inside the Mountain Tough app, you're not only going to find all of our physical training programs, but you're going to find additional training as well, so that you can stay sharp physically, mentally, spiritually, and nutritionally. The Mountain Tough app also allows you to train no matter where you are, anytime, anywhere. Additionally, the Mountain Tough app is going to have programs from beginners all the way up to elite athletes. And all of our programming is structured in a way that you can start with no gear at body weight, and you can go all the way up to programming that is full gear. So you can do that in a robust home gym or your local gym. There's no excuse for you not to start today. With Mountain Tough, you can conquer your goals with the ideal program for your lifestyle and schedule. Train with equipment or just your body weight on your phone, tablet, TV, or web browser. Most importantly, Mountain Tough will help you train your mindset so you are always ready for anything life throws your way. Mountain Tough is offering the Mountain Tough podcast listeners an incredible offer. 6 weeks free on the Mountain Tough app. All you need to do is use the code MTNPOD to redeem your 6 weeks of training. That'll be a 14-day free trial plus a whole additional 4 weeks of training. Just go to mountaintough.com and enter code MTNPOD for your 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app.
exactly. No, you nailed it. We say that all the time too. That was one of Jay's early quotes is like, let's walk this walk together. Because yeah, and look, I think it's a good gateway drug for veterans and maybe athletes even too, to understand that not only people in my community can understand me. Like if this veteran, if this person that I thought maybe I didn't have anything in common with, someone that went to war, and I played football. Like that's not the same thing. Of course it's not. But once you kind of break that down and understand all those things that we do have in common, it helps with reintegration into the real world. Because the reality is, like, now that we're back, whether it was overseas or in a stadium, um, for the next whatever 50 years or whatever it is, like this is the world we live in now, and we need to work with these people, and we need to understand them, and we want them to understand us and not judge us or think that, like what does post-traumatic stress actually look like, what do these things look like, like let's not all be on both sides of this situation, the veteran side and the civilian side. Like, let's not all think we know what the other person does or doesn't relate to or understand, because
Hmm.
we've all got, post-traumatic stress, for example, is a human issue, not a veteran issue. Like, well, of course, a lot of veterans have experienced that, um, but a lot of people that didn't serve in the military experience that as well. And there's a lot more that we do have in common, and we need to be able to build those bridges and connect, instead of just silo off and feel like, well, they're just not gonna understand me because of this. And yeah, maybe there's certain things they won't understand ever, and that's okay, but there's probably a lot more than you realize that they will.
There's a ton. Yeah. And just bringing those things into the light is such a game changer, because most individuals struggle because they think the thing that they're struggling with is so unique, and that if they were to share it with anyone, they would think that they're weird or bizarre for the things that they're going through. But what you see constantly is, like, as soon as you bring those things into the light and everyone in the room's like, yeah, I've been struggling with the same thing for 5 years. That is such a game changer when that experience happens, because when you realize that the people around you are struggling with the same things that you were scared to share, and you realize that you're kind of all in this fight together, you go from feeling alone to feeling encouraged that, wow, if that guy did it, I can do it. And so I'm sure that's changing the game all over the country.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and also, sometimes these people not only have experienced and are experienced that, but they've gotten through and they've seen to the other side, so they can be like, so this was my path, this was my journey, and I know exactly where you're at because I remember being there, and now I'm here. And I still struggle with that sometimes, but this is how I manage it, and this is how I talk back to that voice in my head or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you
Yeah.
know. But there's a really cool, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the first movie I directed is called MVP. So there's a movie out there about, and it's based on real people, based on some of the actual MVP members who kind of started this whole thing, and Randy Couture and Tony Gonzalez, who's one of the greatest tight ends to ever play the game, and Jay Glazer and even Michael Strahan and Howie Long. They all play themselves in the movie and
Awesome.
have like kind of tell some of their own stories. But the movie's called MVP, and it's about based on a Marine who was living in a homeless shelter and a former NFL player, first year out of the league, and they meet each other, and they feel like they got nothing in common initially, and come to find out that, like, they've got so much more than they ever thought. Maybe they're more similar, um, even though different races and experiences and childhoods. Movie they're more similar than anybody else they've ever met, and
Hmm.
kind of help each other through that transition. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that movie's out. It was on Paramount Plus. I think we just moved. I think now it's on like Prime, Apple TV, and Tubi, and some other places. But
Uh,
definitely check out the MVP movie if you get a chance. It's a good way to like learn more about how we started and what the organization kind of the not so much the nuts and bolts, but just the heartbeat of what MVP is, if that makes sense.
oh, I love that. That's awesome. I'll definitely check it out. And I was
Please.
I was curious, did you ever go back to Darfur?
That's funny you say that. No, I have not, but a good friend of mine, um, Joe, who we've been talking for a while about. He's an author. He's a great sports writer, and he also works in the film and TV space. He actually was one of the producers on this recent, like, Serena Williams ESPN doc, and
Yeah.
doing working on something. I think the new Red Sox doc that just came out. He was working on that, so he's done a lot of that in that space. But he's been very interested in my story and figuring out, like, how is there a good way he could maybe an interesting way that he could maybe tell it through the sports writer eye, um but this whole journey. And he's like, dude, we should go back to Darfur and kind
Yeah.
of what retrace those steps. And
That would be
um,
awesome.
it would be awesome. I mean, it's been t- almost 22, 21 years now. 21 years. It's been 21 years. um so more than almost half my life. But it's like, Yeah, it feels it feels so distant, but also I remember that. I remember it vividly,
Hmm.
almost every day and all these experiences and just the way I felt, feeling kind of alive for the first time in a new way. And yeah, I should go
Yeah,
back.
you got to
Should
go
definitely.
back
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Well, thanks for jumping on, man. I love what you're doing. I love what MVP stands for and how it's been built and structured, and your story of how you just have pushed through these different fear elements to just make sure you're trying things that your heart is telling you to try is super inspiring. I think it's what a lot of people need to hear right now. A lot of people a lot of people are feeling things they should be doing, but they're scared to try. So I think your message will be super inspiring. And then, we're really close to the scenarios you laid out for MVP. We have so many close Mountain Tough friends that are transitioning out of special operations, and it's rough. I mean, it's rough coming out of
Absolutely.
some of those environments that they they were pushing hard, training hard, they were having a ton of fun, and they had a really tight camaraderie unit. And now they have to try to recreate that on the civilian side, and it's not easy. And so I think having an option like MVP nationally is huge. So appreciate what you're doing and how you've done it, man.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, I mean, it's just there's so many opportunities for us. And like, I think veterans and athletes specifically, and look, we've got way more veterans in our membership than athletes. First of all, there's a lot more veterans than former professional athletes, like population wise. But um, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of vets in search of that, and like with talk about quickly about a sector I had no prior knowledge in, like getting into the meat industry, getting into the um and I'm no rancher, I wouldn't even pretend that, but like, you know, things that I like, what am I passionate about? What am I interested in? Like I love to eat, I love a good steak, and but I love value, and also like I'm the type of guy who I don't know what to I don't know exactly what to order if I go to the butcher shop. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah,
just like, what's the best? You tell me. So like because of all these, like trying to figure out, solve that problem. And also like we want to support the American rancher. You know what I mean? People that the are doing things the right way, the ethical way, as far as raising cattle and all that. Uh, but like, how do I be a part of helping solve that problem? So, I co-founded a meat company called Eight Primal, and it is helping feed that creative, curious part of me as well. You know
love
what I
that.
mean?
Yeah,
That's like looking for, okay, so there's all these, subscription services. They'll, they send meat to your door, but it's like, where does that meat come from? Is it actually, without hormones and antibiotics and, nothing added, no preservatives, nothing like that, and is it actually all grass fed and grass or grain finished? I need to see that for myself. I don't really trust it,
yeah.
and then learning that a lot of the meat comes from other countries because it's cheaper, and I get that, but it's like, we're in this place right now. I was just up in Visalia, fruit farm country, and it's like, it's crazy to see how much comes from here, that we have at our fingertips. And we've got to figure out more ways to make it accessible, affordable, but we got to support our own here, you know what I
Yeah,
mean, and kind of find that. So
for
yeah, so
sure.
we partner with a couple of ranches out in Texas, and work their family owned farms, and we're just working with them. um, and yeah, again, the company's called Eight Primal. So to definitely go check it out, because it's been a learning experience for me over the last year, just launching this deal and going out and getting to see what right looks like in that area. But also understanding that, like when I do the numbers, I'm like, I go to the grocery store and look, it's actually cheaper. You're getting better quality stuff, and it's cheaper than going to the grocery store where you don't even know where that stuff's
You
coming
don't
from.
even know what you're getting.
Exactly.
That is awesome. And I totally get what you're saying around that's reignited your passion of like creativity and creating something new out of nothing. I mean, that's the type of guy you are. And if you're not doing that, if you're not looking for that next thing, that next creative thing,
Yeah.
you're going to struggle. And we got to support the American farmer and rancher. I mean, they're really the backbone of this whole country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's so many of our ancestors. That's what they came here to do.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother grew up on a farm in Nebraska during the Dust Bowl, with 10 brothers and sisters. And they were all working. She's 6 years old. She's working. You know what I mean? Like she's farming. And yeah, that's just like, that's who we are. That's in our DNA, it's in our blood. And yeah, like again, we're in these digital times. So how do we connect where we're at today with technology
Mm-hmm.
and our roots and like where, healthy stuff is coming from? I'm not ready to start eating lab grown anything,
No.
genetically modified stuff. I don't want that.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We do not need that.
Mm.
Well,
No, but we're doing it. We're doing it. It's scary.
It is scary. Yeah. Well, Nate, thank you, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate you jumping on.
Of course. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate being here and having this conversation with you, because it is super important. I think there's a lot of people out there that I think will hear this message. It'll resonate with them, and then now the challenge is on them to take action.
It is action, and action is the defeater of anxiety. So I think that's a good move. As soon as you take action, a lot of that fear, worry, and doubt goes away.
Amen.
Well, thanks, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Wow, that was a cool conversation with Nate. Remember, we're always looking for that golden nugget. Hands down, the big one out of the episode with Nate is it's never too late to try the things that you want to try in this life. Holy cow, I had no idea that he went into special operations at that age and a pro football at that age. That is inspiring. And so many guys get hung up in, I'm too old to try, I'm too old to start. And I think Nate just shattered those stereotypes. So think about that. Think about the things you want to do in your life and make them happen. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. And we will see you on the next episode.